Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a fascinating biological mystery that has massive implications for our daily health, recovery, and overall longevity. We're looking at exactly how physical pressure translates into profound neurobiological shifts. Now, we've all heard the marketing, right? That a weighted blanket feels like a hug. But today, we're pushing way past that superficial idea. We're going to reason from first principles to uncover the precise molecular, cellular, and endocrine chain reactions that happen when the human body experiences sustained physical compression.
So think about this. How does a simple environmental input, literally just dead weight, completely rewrite your internal neurobiology? To answer that, we have to look at the body as one massive integrated biological system. We need to understand the cellular and systemic mechanisms at play and connect sleep architecture, autonomic regulation, and hormonal dynamics into one unified biological framework.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the mechanics of touch, from the skin to the nervous system.
To really grasp this, we've got to start at the microscopic level. Think of your skin as this massive, highly sensitive sensory antenna. But there's a stark contrast in exactly how it processes touch. On one side, you have rapid-adapting superficial receptors, things like Meissner's and Pacinian corpuscles. These guys detect fleeting inputs, like a light breeze brushing against you or a high-frequency vibration. They adapt incredibly quickly and just stop firing. But on the other side, we have slow-adapting proprioceptive pathways. Buried deep down in our muscles, tendons, and joint capsules, these receptors don't adapt quickly at all. Instead, they provide a constant, sustained stream of data about our spatial boundaries. It's basically your body's fundamental sixth sense.
Moving on to Section 2, pathways of deep pressure and the brain's interoceptive hubs.
So, how does this deep, heavy sensory input actually reach the brain to trigger a biological state change? Well, it takes a totally different physiological highway than superficial touch. What we're talking about here is deep pressure stimulation. Actually, scratch that. It's almost better described as a deep interoceptive reset. When you apply heavy, sustained physical compression, you bypass the superficial, unmyelinated C-tactile fibers entirely. Instead, the signal hops on the large-diameter, heavily myelinated A-beta nerve fibers. Because these fibers are insulated so densely, they transmit sensory data incredibly fast, shooting straight up the dorsal column of your spinal cord and plugging directly into the primary somasensory cortex.
And when that heavy signal arrives, functional MRI studies show something incredible. It hits the mid-insula, a key hub for interoceptive integration. Here, your brain literally translates the physical compression of a blanket into a profound neurological sense of safety, spatial grounding, and containment. This directly counteracts that floaty bodily disorientation we so often feel during acute stress or a panic attack.
Which brings us to Section 3, autonomic nervous system regulation, or the tipping point of arousal. Once your brain registers that profound sense of safety, it kicks off a massive physiological response downstream. You see, when we're stressed, anxious, or tossing and turning with insomnia, our sympathetic nervous system is running the show. That's your classic fight-or-flight state. Elevated heart rate, hyperarousal, cortisol pumping through your veins. Sustained deep pressure acts as an autonomic counter-regulator. It deliberately shifts that biological tipping point, forcing dominance away from the excitatory sympathetic system and handing the reins over to the restorative parasympathetic nervous system. This rest and digest state lowers your heart rate, stabilizes your breathing, downregulates the HPA axis, and primes your entire system for deep metabolic recovery.
Now let's look at Section 4, the endocrine sleep cascade, and the hormonal shifts for restorative sleep.
This shift in your autonomic nervous system immediately triggers a massive endocrine cascade. Check this out. In a landmark 2023 study out of Uppsala University, researchers discovered that using a weighted blanket tailored to just 12% of a person's body weight led to a remarkable 30 to 32% increase in pre-sleep melatonin. Melatonin is, of course, the master hormone of your circadian rhythm. To put that into perspective, a 32% increase is a massive natural hormonal spike just from simply lying under a heavy blanket. The working theory is that these deep sensory signals travel through the spinal cord, hit the nucleus tractus solitarius, and eventually signal the pineal gland to pump out significantly more of this vital sleep hormone.
But it doesn't stop with just melatonin. Deep pressure stimulates a much wider hormonal cascade. It ramps up the synthesis of serotonin and dopamine, which stabilizes your mood and reduces behavioral agitation.
It also triggers a release of oxytocin, the exact same hormone we release during physical touch, which provides potent anti-anxiety and sedative effects. And simultaneously, it absolutely plummets your circulating levels of cortisol, actively mitigating the hyperactivity of your body's stress response. If you've ever felt that heavy wave of calm just wash over you, this is exactly what it feels like to be biochemically prepared for deep recovery.
Let's move into Section 5, Clinical Evidence and Efficacy. Time to weigh the scientific data.
So the underlying biology is absolutely fascinating, but how do these molecular and hormonal shifts actually play out in the real world for different populations? While for folks with ADHD, major depressive disorder, and clinical insomnia, the studies show robust, super clear improvements. Patients experience significantly better sleep maintenance, higher daytime activity levels, and a noticeable drop in fatigue. However, and this is an important nuance, for individuals with autism spectrum disorder, the results are a bit more mixed. While sleep onset, meaning the time it actually takes to fall asleep, often improves, the data regarding total sleep duration and waking up in the middle of the night remains less conclusive.
Now, I want to be completely impartial here and point out the limitations of the current science. While the acute physiological effects, like that immediate parasympathetic activation we talked about, are very well documented, a lot of these clinical studies rely on fairly small sample sizes. For instance, that incredible melatonin study, it relied on just 26 young adults. So the scientific consensus acknowledges these really promising underlying mechanics, but firmly emphasizes that we still need large-scale, long-term, randomized controlled trials to fully validate these findings across diverse populations.
All right. Section 6, Practical Protocols and Safety, the Evidence-Based Application.
If we're going to intentionally manipulate our autonomic nervous system, we absolutely have to follow evidence-based clinical guidelines. The general consensus from occupational therapists for picking a weighted blanket is to calculate roughly 10% of your body weight plus 1 pound. And honestly, if you've never felt that, it's way heavier than you might expect. It should be applied about 10 minutes before bed or 10 minutes prior to a known trigger of overarousal. This gives the nervous system time to acclimate to that intense proprioceptive input. Critically, you've got to monitor temperature because materials like fleece or mink can cause overheating fast, and always ensure the user can easily and independently take the blanket off. Because safety is paramount, especially when it comes to kids. Looking at the official NHS Derbyshire healthcare guidelines, there are strict medical protocols in place. A weighted blanket must literally never cover the head. It must never be used as a physical restraint, and caregivers have to ensure the airway isn't restricted in any way whatsoever. The weight should never be concentrated on the chest or neck, and you must be able to observe vital signs, making sure breathing never becomes labored.
Furthermore, those same pediatric guidelines explicitly state these tools should generally be used for a maximum of 20 minutes at a time. You might be wondering, why just 20 minutes? It's all about sensory adaptation. The nervous system rapidly habituates to the sensation. It basically gets used to the input, and that therapeutic downregulation wears off over time. Also, notice the absolute medical contraindication here. Deep pressure is strictly prohibited for children with a diagnosis of epilepsy.
Building on those strict boundaries, deep pressure is just simply not safe for everyone. It poses a severe suffocation risk for infants under 2 years old or kids under 50 pounds. It's also entirely contraindicated for anyone with severe respiratory issues like obstructive sleep apnea or asthma. In those cases, adding extra physical compression on the chest cavity could dangerously restrict oxygen intake. And folks with circulatory problems, low blood pressure, or claustrophobia absolutely must consult a physician before trying one out.
Ultimately, what this all reveals is that the human biological need for physical grounding isn't just some modern comfort preference. It's literally an evolutionary imperative. For millennia, our ancestors slept huddled together or swaddled, receiving constant tactile feedback that biologically signaled safety from predators. Deep pressure taps directly into that ancient hardwired circuitry, effectively downregulating the nervous system to enforce metabolic recovery in our increasingly overstimulated modern world.
Which leaves us with a truly profound scientific question to chew on. If the simple, inanimate weight of a blanket can alter your brainwaves, spike your melatonin by 32%, and completely rewrite your hormonal sleep cascade, what other environmental inputs in your bedroom are silently regulating or severely disrupting your autonomic nervous system every single night? Think about your light exposure, the ambient temperature, the acoustic frequencies around you. Understanding the deep biology of touch is really just the beginning of truly optimizing human recovery. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the deep biology of your environment.